Hey, Leanne. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining me on That Will Never Work. I'm really excited to hear what you're up to. So, what I think the best way for us to start is just for you to jump right in. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're working on, and then maybe what it is you're struggling with or would like some help with?
Great. Okay, so I'm Leanne, master's level social worker, and I've been working in the field of trauma for like 25 years. And my new plan in September of 2021 was to create Angela's Hotline, which is a sexual assault 24/7 hotline for sexual assault survivors, run and managed by therapists, which hasn't been done yet. Most rape crisis lines are done by volunteers, and what we wanted to do was actually help victims with the things that, I don't know, they don't offer you when you call in a hotline. Basically, hotlines are often just support, but there's so much else that is people need support with, like how to address the systems that they're having to work with, like the hospital, police, court, crown. Yeah.
And one thing I want to be clear up, has you started this yet, or this is still just an idea you have?
No, I started it. I started in March of this year. And so we have a toll-free number, and we have the regular number as well. And we have 3 volunteer therapists and about 8 regular volunteers to help out.
Well, is it 24/7? It can't be with only 3 volunteer therapists.
Well, right now, so the biggest hurdle that I've had thus far is getting grant money so that I can actually hire more social workers. What we want to do is because the 3 therapists that are volunteering right now, we're all 25 years plus therapists. So we plan to use master's level graduates that are working through the program to actually help run it. But I didn't really want to start until we had some money behind us. So
Okay.
we have interviewed 67 different organizations, and there's tons of them, and they all think it's a great idea, but they don't want to be the first ones to put their money down. So I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm like, okay, so either I'm doing something wrong, and I'm not sure what I've missed. And actually, but what I do know this about myself, which is I'm terrible at asking people for money, and I'm a giver, not a asker. And so I guess what I struggled with was I actually came up with a second business idea to try and manage that issue. So I don't know if we should talk about that today or not. But that was basically...
In other words, a business idea to help people who don't like asking for money?
Well, kind of.
Is that what you mean?
Well, actually, specifically for this.
Let's not get too distracted.
Okay.
Maybe we'll go that direction.
Okay.
And it's up to you. This is your time. But if you do want to talk about the Angela's Hotline.
Angela's Hotline.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Do you want to know why we termed it Angela's? Or no?
I can only guess why it's in honor of Angela.
Well, actually, in England, if you go into a bar and you ask for Angela because the date or person you're with, you're not comfortable, they will bring you to another room and help you resolve that issue. And we thought that was so cool after the Me Too movement to actually take a system that's already in run and make it more international. In fact, that program has gone to Australia too. So we decided, why don't we give Angela a hotline? So we did.
I love that idea. That's great. And let's see where to start here. So I assume that you, of course, have probably read tons of entrepreneur stories. where the plucky protagonist says, I had to make 6,504 pitches before finally someone believed in me, and now look how successful we are.
Right.
And that is the one genre over in the library from the person who says, I bought my lottery ticket for 17 years every single week before I finally won the lottery.
Yeah.
And I got to say that they're probably very similar stories, which is that you're right. If you're getting 67 no's in a row, there is two obvious solutions, probably more than two. But certainly we'll pick two. One is, and like you said, you're just not that good at it.
Yeah.
But a different way of saying that, a perhaps better way of saying that, is you're just not saying it correctly. You're not hitting the right points. You're not understanding it from their perspective properly. There's a whole there's an art that goes into making that pitch. But let's assume that's one category of reasons why you're getting rejected so often. The other one, in fact, the more painful one, is there's some fundamental flaw in the fundability of the project. And they're not necessarily sitting you down and saying, here specifically are the problems that I see with this. And maybe it's a combination of both.
Okay.
I'm going to start in a slightly different place, actually, to give you some advice about this, because I'm really curious about your comment about there isn't a hotline that you know of run and staffed by
Therapists.
What was there an adjective before that? Some kind of therapist, or just
trauma
therapist,
trauma therapist,
licensed
up here
therapist,
registered, but
registered therapist. And you said, but there's tons of them run by volunteers.
Yeah.
And I'm always fond of asking you if you can imagine why that is.
Well, sure, because therapists need to get paid and they get paid a lot of money. So I get that.
Correct.
Yes. So, and the other thing is, what's interesting is that a lot of therapists don't actually know what will actually help with sexual assault survivors, where there's a new therapy out there called cognitive processing therapy, which is being used in the States with your veterans. And it's working for PTSD. So, and there's like 4 or 5 here in British Columbia that are certified to do CPT, but pretty much it's not well known up here in Canada. So that's the other thing. All of the therapists are trained in that. So we would be running a very specific hotline, and I'd really like to do groups where,
right.
But again, that requires grant funding. So
yeah, as the thing is, there is certainly a huge body of knowledge about how to do development, how to fundraise. And I'll be honest, I'm not an expert at that. I'm not even that good at it. I mean, I do serve in a number of nonprofit boards, so I'm exposed to it, but I'll be the first one to confess that when we do committee assignments, I'm usually not clamoring to get onto the development committee. Yeah. I just don't find that type of work interesting. I do donate a lot of money to interest groups that I care about. I do a lot of asks, so it's not that. It's just that science of development, there are professionals who are fantastic at it. And it might be worth your time to convince one of them to spend a handful of hours with you, who can walk you through, what do I need to do to begin fundraising for real? But I will comment on a different piece of this, that there is an immense number of people like yourself who will really want to help, which you so clearly do, who have come up with, and I hate to use the term, but I will anyway, great ideas, helpful ideas,
sure.
Things that can help. And then your problem basically is, well, how do I get someone to pay for it? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know, like what you've learned is that there's a missing piece to this discussion, that when you go to the Prime Minister or when you go to someone who a foundation, they're not listening and saying, Leanne, is this a good idea or a bad idea? Is this going to help people or not help people? Because obviously it's going to help people. Obviously it's a good idea. You're trying to help people who are survivors of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
What a great thing. And in fact, you're trying to do it in a more expensive, better way.
Yeah, it's true.
They're wondering about they're not going, okay, since it's a good idea, we'll give you money. Because if it was, you'd get even more money than the volunteer hotlines. Because it's an even better idea because you're using more expensive paid people. What you have to make sure you understand is what the donors' motivations are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to go out on a limb and guess here is that because it's so much more expensive to have registered therapists on the line rather than volunteers, your cost per helped person is quite a bit higher. Which means for a fixed donation, you help a lot fewer people. So what you have to understand is, to what degree is the donor interested in that?
Right.
And if they are, you better be prepared to address that. Okay, another thing that donors are usually looking for is outcomes. You may be able to say that, no, the all volunteer hotlines, their outcomes aren't good, whereas our outcomes are X. But to do that, you can't just go in and say, I have this great idea to do it with a registered therapist. So what? What you want to do is, I've developed a way which is incredibly more effective. It has better outcomes. And how do I know that? Is because I ran this project on volunteer dollars and on scraping it along for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And we did some studies and we found out that for every 100 calls to the all volunteer hotlines, the satisfaction rating, however you measure outcomes of calls, was this, whereas people here were X. So in fact, my cost per satisfactory outcome is actually lower. I mean, you can tell that I'm making this up.
Sure.
But what you're doing wrong is not recognizing understanding in advance where they're coming from, so that you can make sure you've positioned your service not as it's better, because what you could just do is, I'll just go in and pitch, I'm going to have a medical doctor. I'm going to have a PhD in psychotherapy man the hotline 24/7. But now I have to raise $10 million. But it's a better idea. But we can extend that even further, that anyone who calls for free can spend 10 hours on the phone with a PhD and with a therapist. In other words, you can extend it infinitely and make it better and better. What your innovation has to be is to find this effective middle ground of dollars towards some other angle that will appeal to somebody. And that's the step you're missing.
Right.
Does this make sense
at
all?
It does. And so, I mean, as we've gone along, and we've been doing this for about a year now, like the line hasn't been ready, but we've been thinking about this for a long time. And, it's actually, CBT works when you actually apply in 12 sessions, which is problematic for a hotline. And so even though I purchased the nonprofit and federal nonprofit, I realized that actually naming it a hotline was maybe problematic, because really what's needed is free group therapy, actually. And so I'm like, damn it. Anyway, but I want to tell you as well about something else that I wonder if I shouldn't be doing it. Back up and try that first. So I know that you talked about when you did Netflix, you have like 5 different companies. So this idea came from me hating asking for money. Okay. And so we were going to call it Angela's Tea Company, have a nonprofit tea company where the profits of that tea go to sexual assault survivors and their counseling in whatever fashion they wanted. That could be Angela's hotline, or it could be any other. And thereby taking myself out of the I need money, please, to, okay, well, here's an idea and maybe people will buy the tea. Now, the trick about the tea is every box will have therapeutic writing on how to deal with mental health wellness. And so kind of like the old Cracker Jack boxes, where you had a little prize. But in this tea box will be like, if we had let's say a cup of blues for depression, you would have therapeutic issues around depression and how to resolve that, maybe. Taking it from the therapeutic office to your kitchen table. So, and then the profits of that would go to funding sexual assault survivor. I don't know, is that a crazy idea? I haven't done anything with it, but I think it's good.
Well, it's a little bit of, you're missing a magic step here.
Okay.
Which is, will people actually
Want the tea?
Yes.
Right.
Because wouldn't it be great? In other words, what you'd have to have some evidence that in fact you can sell tea effectively, which I'm going to guess either A, is not necessarily an interest of yours, becoming an expert in selling tea, or one that you have any existing expertise in, having spent 25 years as a therapist. So I'm a little hestant about it. It's a bit of a magic bullet. If, for example, you said, "Listen, I've been working for 25 years at Coca-Cola as a brand manager, and I'm sick of selling sugar water. I really want to help the world. So what I'm going to do is launch a version of Tom's Shoes, but tea. And for every package of tea." In other words, then I go, okay, that's pretty cool. And that person will be going, but I don't know anything about the therapy piece, so I'm going to have to partner with people who know the therapy. And yours might be the opposite one. If you could find someone who's passionate about helping women and really understands that business, then you might have something.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it sounds a little bit like a Mickey Rooney movie where they're going to repossess grandma's house. Well, let's put on a show. And my dad's got a barn, and my mom can make use drapes for curtains. You've got it's like the magic solution here to your money problems is selling tea. And I'm usually, you've probably heard me. I'm not trying to disparage the ideas.
That's great.
I'd stick. What I would be thinking in terms of using your expertise, which you have all this expertise, using the passion you have for helping people this way, is really be thinking, is there a more effective way to do hotline therapy using more qualified people, but not just by saying, instead of using untrained volunteer.
I mean, they're trained. You can train them, but like it's
what I mean.
The questions.
You're not using people, less educated volunteers specifically.
Yeah. But then,
is there some hybrid model that you can?
But I guess my point is,
better outcomes.
Why would I start another one when they're already out there? I guess what I wanted, and maybe I should have said this to start with, is that this became a passion of mine, actually, because I was sexually assaulted 5 years ago by a local firefighter when I was medically compromised, and he drugged my water. And so I actually had to go through the whole system myself, but I'm educated. And so I thought, reasonably that, working with the police and going to the hospital and all that stuff would go smooth. But I actually discovered that despite all my education, no, there's many different areas where there is just not the help that you need. And so things like how long do drugs stay in your system, or if I go to hospital to get the exam, do I have to immediately talk to a police officer? When you call the helplines, they're like, yeah, that's too bad. That's actually not the help that's needed. Actually, people need direction at a time in their lives when they just need calm, sensible instructions as to how to manage that. But I don't think the knowledge is out there. That's what's missing. And so, that's what I want to get at. I don't know.
I love that you're trying to solve that problem.
Yeah.
I think that's it's fantastic, and you're right. I'm sure there's tremendous gaps between what's needed and what's available. And as I almost started off with, it very well could be that you can find someone to fund this. I just want to make sure, I guess the lasting advice for that is to really understand for the people who are willing to fund it, what are they looking for?
Okay.
What what's what's missing here? Uh, is it as simple as you said? For one of the, I think I picked up the comment that they don't want to be the first one
Yeah,
or
they
something
all
like
said,
that.
amazing. Yes, we want to get on board in this. Absolutely. We just don't want to be the first. And everybody said that, from the curling people to Bell Talk to you name it. Oh, and Prime Minister Trudeau
Oh,
also sent a little spiel. We talked to all of the MPs and MLAs, you name it, we did it. But nobody wants to put their
well,
money
those
down.
curling people are notoriously stingy.
Actually, they're still potentially looking at it. So I don't know, but
I'm
and
gonna,
Johnson and
I'm gonna
Johnson too was even considering it. So we had a lot of,
let's go down that path for a second
yeah.
then. What? Why? What do you think they were scared of? What do you think they?
Mm,
Well, I guess the big question is, did you ask them why not?
no. So yes, I'm already there in terms of following back up with them to say, so what happened here? I think they all said things like, well, it's COVID. We're just not sure that we could put this on the yes for maybe next year. We kind of want to see how you do on your own, right? So they all want to make sure it's not a fly by night thing, which is totally fair. Um,
Well,
yeah,
maybe that's it.
yeah.
Maybe that rather than going in for asking for how much money were you asking for?
Well, it depended on the company. So some we were asking for $50,000, and others it was a little bit more. We weren't asking for a ton for the first year. We were just trying to get our foot in the door so we could do the phone line. I did a GoFundMe and got $700, but that's not a lot. Okay, that's just not enough. So really, the volunteers and we've been doing this ourselves.
Uh, what were you saying that the first that amount of money would get you?
Um,
Was this to run for a year? Was this
Oh yeah,
just
we were
was
just
it
doing for a
non-specific?
year. No, I wasn't actually doing this because I know I'm terrible at asking for money. Truly, I had a friend of mine who was volunteering to do that, and he was saying that we need to help pay for the therapists. We need insurance. We need the phone itself, and we were very specific. Like we had it itemized down to the nth degree. So, but
So, oh no, this is good. I hear where you're going. So I do have a suggestion then. So let's do two things simultaneously, perhaps. So one is I think you do have a little bit of research to do, and I was saying at first you should speak to a development professional, but which you should. But I'm going to change that. Your assignment, I think, is of the 65 people you reached out to for money who said,
not
I
yet.
don't want to go
Yeah.
first. I want you to go back to them, not to them, to a handful of them,
Okay.
5, 7.
Okay.
And when you call, and it could be you,
It'll be me
okay?
this
Not
time. Yeah, I'll do it.
not your professional other person. And you can say, I'm calling not to ask for money now.
Okay.
I'm calling not to make a push you or feel guilt you or do anything like that. I'm purely wondering whether you could spare half an hour and walk me through your thinking in terms of what you said no, so that I can begin to design a program which is more effective at raising money in the future. In other words, you're asking for something in some ways a bit more valuable, which is their time, but which they may be very happy to be the first person to give out. So and you can collect all this information about what was that code for when they said I don't want to go first. Okay, and then what I suspect they're going to say is it's going to come down to some variant of either we're not confident you actually can pull this off.
I can. They don't know me well enough yet.
No, of course not. But I mean, that could be what this was code for.
Sure.
Was this person's a dreamer, and all of our $100,000 is going to go into setup costs, and that's not what we're in business for. We're in business to help people, and we don't want the first of it to go into renting a space and paying a salary. And in other words, that may be what they're saying.
Right.
Or lack of confidence that this is for real.
Right.
A lot of them might be saying, I'd like to see some evidence of efficacy.
Yeah, that's the piece right there. But how do I do that if, okay, so here's the thing. I believe that's the case. So the problem is well, first of all, to get the media to even notice that we exist, that's partly, right?
What would it cost? Let me jump in for a
Okay.
second. What do you think it would, I don't need a dollar amount here. Let's say you said, I need to demonstrate both of those things. Now, to demonstrate that does not mean I need to do it for a year. To demonstrate that does not mean I need to do it with a team of 30 therapists. To demonstrate probably does not even need that I need to do it 24 hours. I'm going to demonstrate this in a much, much more limited way. And you're going to have to be the clever one here. But so here you have the person who doesn't know a lot about this, going to make things up. So I'm making it up.
Go for it.
So you say, we're going to be open from 7 p.m. till 1 a.m., from 9 p.m. till 2 a.m., Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a date night hotline again, I'm making it up.
Sure.
But you figure out some way to dramatically limit your hours so that
That's brilliant.
you yourself can staff it.
Yeah. Happy to do that.
And you can do it 3 nights a week and again, 10 weeks. And it allows you to get some evidence that people call. And also, since you're not trying, you basically say, I'm just going to go to all the bars in the nightlife zone and allow me to post just a quick something. You find some way to begin putting the number out there that if you have a problem, I'm here for you. Okay. And see what happens. Okay. See what the volumes are. See what the efficacy is. See how long these calls are so you can begin getting some sense of volume. Learn for yourself firsthand how many of these calls really required somebody who was a registered therapist. In other words, then you may go, wow, I was premature. I had this great idea that I wasn't quite sure it was really for real. But wow, I've now spoken to 75 women and 10 men over the last 13 weeks. And wow, I have a totally different sense of now what's needed and how to handle it. And I'm going to do another 13 weeks. And then you go, okay, now I've got it. And then now when you go in to pitch for money, it's a different story. You're saying, I'm doing this myself for free. I'd like to hire one person, 2 people to help me, and I'd like to extend my hours a little bit. I'm not asking for $1 million. I'm asking for $25,000 just to do this pilot for them. In other words, you're going to iterate your way into it, which will lower the cost requirement and more importantly, allow you to start for a dramatically lower amount. Maybe just the cost of getting the phone line and printing up some flyers. Maybe you can get started by going around and asking someone for $5,000 rather than 50.
I already paid for all that, but yeah, that's awesome. I've already done that part. I paid for the flyers.
Fine,
but yes, I get what you're saying.
Know what I mean.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. And I love the idea of a pilot because the phone line has been open, but because I haven't really had the publicity, I've been grateful because it's mostly been me. We have divvied it up between the 3 of us, but still, I'm just waiting for the calls to come flooding in, and that's a concern, right? So, not to be able to service everybody, right?
There's a different message there too, which is that if calls aren't flooding in,
nobody knows about it.
That could be, and so your mission is not. Again, I don't want you to go spending tons of money on a big publicity campaign. If there's a dramatic, I hope I'm not coming off as being harsh, but if there's not, if this is an amazing idea,
it's going to work,
and there's a huge pent-up demand for it, it'll happen with very little word of mouth.
Right.
So, You get the idea. I mean,
Yeah.
and again, I don't know the best places to promote it, but I wouldn't say this is something that you're going to push
Hmm.
that hard.
Hmm.
You're making it available for people who are looking for help.
Yes.
And I think there's a more reasonable way to do that. Well, I hope
Great.
this gives you at least a way to start.
Absolutely.
Took us a while to get there. um, but I love what you're doing, and this is one of those things which I so sincerely hope you manage to get going. And hopefully we can then speak again sometime in the future about more advanced fundraising techniques.
That'd be
Once you
great.
realize you actually have some evidence based
Yeah, that's missing.
that you're onto something, and that you've demonstrated that someone wouldn't be the first, and that you've actually proven you can pull this off.
Thank you so much. You have no idea how helpful this has been. It's been great.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, good, Leanne. I'm glad we hopefully had a little breakthrough here.
Yeah, we did.
And best of luck with this,
Thanks.
and hopefully we can follow up some point in the future and see how things are going.
I'd love it.
Okay.
Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
All right.
Good wishes. Bye.
Bye-bye.